So let me just go ahead and get started. So as an introduction, I'm Brian Haynes. I work for FM Systems. And the beginning of my presentation, just please indulge me for a few minutes. What I found out at this conference, which has just been phenomenal for us, is that a lot of people don't know FM Systems very well, even though there are literally dozens of universities and colleges across the nation, across the world that use our products. So I'm going to just kind of do a few case studies to talk about that. And then I'm going to talk about lifecycle BIM and do what I call a level set. And that is just to make sure that we're all understanding sort of how FM Systems defines lifecycle BIM and how it may be a little bit different from the BIM that you guys may hear about. You hear Chuck Meese often say that BIM is a process, and you hear other people say BIM is 3D and all sorts of things. I have a slightly different definition as it applies to facilities management, which is sort of the area of expertise that I have. We're going to explore the I in BIM. I'm going to run you through some examples. I'm sort of dangerously technical, so I can show some kind of interesting things. I'm going to be pulling data in and out of Revit and showing you some really easy ways to do that. And then I'm going to help you to understand what I call the information challenge and sort of the challenges that we see as people begin to adopt the use of products like Revit for facilities management. And then we'll end with an overview of a solution. It just happens to be our solution, but there are other solutions on the market. So I'll use mine as an example because I'm obviously familiar with that one. So a little bit about me. You're probably thinking, what's a marketing guy doing standing up in front of me at a technical conference? I've been in the software industry for 20 years, as I was saying a few minutes ago. I have a bachelor's of architecture from the University of Arizona. And I practiced FM. I started on release 8 of AutoCAD, so I do have a strong background. I still maintain my chops when it comes to AutoCAD. I was a CAD specialist at the University of Arizona. I managed the physical space inventory. This is back in the day. I managed the transition from 700 floor plans from Mylar to AutoCAD. Kind of an interesting project and a lot of fun back then. And I also provided departmental IT support. I was in a department of 12 people. There were 8 planners. There was a real estate person because we also managed all of the lease property at the university. There was an accountant, a director, and the CAD guy. I was the CAD guy. I then got a promotion. I became a management analyst in the same department, and I was responsible for producing the building renewal report and building replacement report. At this time, in the 90s, we were transitioning from a system called Prime. Has anybody ever heard of Prime? If you've been around, it was just a heavy-duty, big steel mainframe system way back in the day. And a little product came out from Microsoft called Microsoft SQL Server. And the Center for Computing got pretty excited about it. We got excited about it, and we volunteered to transition our physical space inventory from a mainframe system to Microsoft SQL Server with the College of Medicine. So that was a sort of my entry into the technical side. I realized at that point that I could make a lot more money in software than I could working for the university, and I got recruited by a company that was a startup. So here I am in software ever since. So a little bit about FM Systems. We have been in the market for over 30 years, founded by Mike Schley, who's an IFMA fellow in 1984. We do have quite a bit of industry participation. Starting this year, we're a CFTA Gold partner, which has been really exciting for us. We've been active in SCUP. I've been a SCUP member for years and years. And we also have our own higher education special interest group, which is a group that we just simply host for our customers. We don't drive it. They drive it themselves, and they talk about it's a lot of universities that get on conference calls and meet us at our user conference and share how they use our system, et cetera. So we do quite a bit there. Here's an example of some of the universities that use our system. Some of them are here. What I've realized is that these are a lot of people that I can actually bring into CFTA. Many of them are not here, and I think it's going to be pretty exciting for us to bring some of our customers to talk about our solution next year at University of Wisconsin, which we're extremely excited about. They use it in a number of different ways. Indiana University is one of our customers that's been using the product for a while. Their challenge was really being able to provide space utilization reports, and they were unable to comply with the reporting requirements of the state funding model. They were taking months to produce their reports. They implemented our solution, our space and asset management solution, and they were able to accurately deliver those real-time reports with the click of a button. It really saved them a lot of time and money. As you'll see, the majority of our customers really are they're beginning with solving a space problem. That's really what we're quite good at. We do have 11 modules in our product, but space and assets are really the core of what we do. And we have Xavier University. Xavier University was what I call accidental BIM. They're probably one of the first universities to widely adopt BIM for all facilities management. Chris Mealy from Messer Construction actually did quite a bit of the modeling from them. He's in the audience today. And I call it accidental BIM because there's a gentleman there by the name of Greg Meyer who walked into a coordination meeting one day. He's a facilities management manager, and he walked in and he saw all of this amazing information in the model that he wanted. So he got involved in the process, and he said that saved him 2 person years of entering data from a very large campus expansion that they were going to do, that he was going to be manually entering all of that information in. He actually worked with the AEC team and just seamlessly sort of carried that data into operations. It was kind of a good story, and they continue to model the rest of the campus. University of North Texas, their big challenge was strict reporting requirements for state and federal government, particularly around research grant tracking. We've got some really great functionality for that. They're one of our customers that we drag them around quite a bit. They like to talk about the solution because it solved a big problem, a big headache. Really taking that space database and then using alternate things off of that, such as their space surveys and research grant tracking. But we also have quite an international portfolio. James Cook University, I love when these guys come to our user conference because it's always fun hanging out with people who speak a different language, English and Australian. They really had the same problem, really federal funding proposals and being able to essentially defend their use of space. So they implemented our system. And last but not least, Canadian, we've actually had quite rapid growth in Canada. Their big challenge was they had a lot of AutoCAD drawings and they required CAD specialists to sort of provide plans to campus people, and they really wanted to hook those up. So our product itself helps to improve space utilization, better accuracy and visibility of facility data, managing all aspects of your campus. So it's got, like I said, 11 modules and a really beautiful reporting capability, which is something I'm going to talk about because I want to show you that you can take a lot of models and a lot of drawings and report across them quite easily as you sort of move up into technology. I know that a lot of people have solutions in place and they're working quite well, but I'll sort of talk about the way you don't need to be afraid of moving to BIM. Sometimes it can seem a little mystical, a little bit, and people don't quite understand it. But once it's in a facilities management arena, it's really quite, it's going to be quite familiar to you. It's not that different from operating in typical, more CAD-based workflows. Also, surveys is another big thing that we've got quite a few people who are really interested in, improving the efficiency and accuracy of the way they use their space, gathering that education, general information survey stuff, and then their indirect cost recovery is something that's a unique focus of many of our customers. So let's just do kind of a level set about how we look at BIM in terms of facilities operations, in particular for universities. So we don't think of BIM, at least in terms of the way we talk to our market, our customers, as being project-based. It has historically been project-based. I think the adoption rate amongst AEC is something like over 80% as determined by McGraw-Hill in their last survey. Typically, when you get to 70 or 80% market adoption, that's saturation. The last 15 to 20% of people are going to go down swinging. They're going to be holding on to their sheets of paper and Excel spreadsheets till the day they die. They're probably not going to adopt. So we really believe that AEC is pretty much fully adopted and moved. So what does that mean? That means a lot of organizations such as universities and colleges are getting models now at the end of the process. They're trying to figure out what to do. Because we are in the world of FM and because our customers typically have anywhere from 500,000 square feet up to 130 million square feet and everything in between, we don't think of single buildings, we think of a portfolio and how to think about the efficiency of those across. So it's not project-based. Second is that we really believe that space for most organizations is a really great organizer of information. It makes reporting quite simple. Campus level reporting, building level reporting, floor level reporting, room level reporting, tracking all of your assets, tracking your utilization really comes down to space. So we believe that lifecycle BIM really needs to take a close look at taking advantage of the space coming out of the models. There's been a lot of momentum early on in terms of the adoption and the use of building information modeling for operations that's focused around assets and maintenance. I think it's great, but it does not take advantage of the spatial component, which we really believe is a core method of organizing the way you think about data. Most of the models that we see are really focused on building elements that need to be maintained or inventoried. It could be space, it could be equipment, it could be things that needed to be counted like furniture, et cetera. I'm going to talk a little bit about models as they apply to facilities management. Who here has gotten a model at the end of a construction project and it's just been sort of tossed over the wall at you? Construction model, and you look at it and you go, I'm not sure what to do with this. It's got rebar and structural steel members and all sorts of things. It's a little overwhelming. I'm going to talk about how we think about models. We really believe it needs to be pragmatic and easily maintainable, that everybody on the facility team should be able to integrate with a BIM lifecycle process. This is not about the Revit guru or the BIM guru. It's not about the CAD specialist. It's about being able to take regular subject matter experts in facilities and providing them with access. And the last thing is that we really believe that it's collaborative by nature. It's the nature of facilities management. It's collaborative. Facilities design and construction collaborates with facilities management, collaborates with space management, collaborates with campus and facilities planning. Really, we believe that if you take a holistic view across that, you'll agree with me that it's collaborative. Another big piece of information that is early in the design process, especially when you're sitting down with maybe you're building a new campus building, architects come in, they do a lot of space planning, a lot of blocking and stacking, they do a lot of renderings and loose drawings, and it tends to be very graphically intensive and less attribute or data intensive. As we move through the process and we go into construction, data becomes more important. We're doing things like clash detection, collision, detecting collisions, et cetera, coordination, as well as beginning to attribute the information more. We're collecting information about what maybe is going to go into the building, what the spaces maybe look like, maybe what the space types may be. And then when we go into operation, suddenly that information becomes incredible, because that spatial and asset data really begins to drive our workflows. So we really believe that BIM takes on more importance in terms of the data coming out of the model as we move into operations. So Chuck Meese, my friend who you've seen present a couple of times, Chuck and I have presented a lot. Chuck always says begin with the end in mind. I always say end with the beginning in mind. This is my push to get facilities management professionals to participate during a EC process so that you get the model you want and not the model you think someone wants, because they're going to give you the model they think you want, or they're not even going to be thinking about you. And I'm not saying that in any sort of way to ding AEC. They're doing their job. But if you're in there with them during early meetings and you're requesting models, you're in there, you're working on the design models, perhaps in the architect early on, you're starting to get them to think about room numbering the way you think about room numbering. At the University of Arizona, this story is a true story. We had a gigantic aerospace engineering building built. I was the CAD guy. I got a big CD filled with construction documents. I opened them up, and the rooms were numbered on a grid, A to Z, 1 to 100. So like A3 was next to D5. And I'm thinking to myself, what kind of wayfinding nightmare is that? And we were never invited into those meetings. And now I'm older and wiser, and I wish I would have shoehorned my way into those, because we had a numbering standard that we followed for all of our facilities. Same thing for BIM construction models. They're wonderful. They inform the model. All of these models that I'm talking about inform the model that you should ultimately be asking for. The BIM as-built model, essentially what was put into the building, getting that sort of turnover handoff model. I have a good friend who's an IT director at an architecture firm in St. Louis. She got really nervous when I started showing this slide, because she thought I was saying redraw the models or throw away everything that was done during the process. And I'm really not saying that. I'm saying it's essentially a variation or modification of that model where we essentially remove extraneous detail. We don't typically care about structure that much in terms of day-to-day operations. We really focus on things that need to be maintained. We focus on spaces and our space types and how our space is classified, our FICM codes, and et cetera. So really those things. And we talk about that as the BIM FM model. So as I go from here on out in my presentation, I'm really talking about that model and less so about those models. So keep that in mind. So what I want to do is explore the BIM. Remember I was saying that I get a little bit technically dangerous. Well, I'm going to show you a Revit model. I'm going to show you how easy it is to get data out of the model in a way that with just some simple free tools, because often we see a model and we see people spinning it around and clicking on things, and it's quite interesting, but you lose your interest in about 5 minutes when you realize it's actually quite difficult to get data from the model if you're really thinking about it that way. So FM Systems developed a process that we call the stages of excellence. I'm not sure why that shot forward so fast. It might be on an auto advance or something. The stages of excellence. I'm not going to talk about that much, but what I'm going to show you is really sort of like at the low level of the stages of excellence. It's really about I'm going to be in the role here of, let's say, a CAD specialist or somebody who likes to, maybe a BIM specialist, somebody who likes to maybe be inside of Revit itself and explore inside of there. There's lots of data available. There's lots of information that you can get out, but it's not really accessible to the facilities management team. Now, what I've seen and what we've seen is that there's not a lot of Revit expertise or BIM expertise in facility staffs at universities. It's changing. There are people coming into the profession now that are bringing those skills. People are getting retrained. They're bringing those skills. Not a ton of it. So you may have a CAD specialist. You may have a BIM specialist. They feel comfortable in this environment. This is just an example of Revit, and I'm showing an area plan. This is a color-coded area plan. It's got some pretty nice rudimentary space tools in here. And I was able to do this by just creating Revit areas for all of my rooms in here and running what's called a area plan, which is a nice way of being able to look at the floor plan in a way. And I could teach you how to do that in a couple of minutes inside of Revit. It's pretty straightforward. There's also schedules. Schedules is a native capability inside of Revit, and you can see by going down and clicking on the schedules in the project browser down here, you're able to go through and you can create new schedules. You can say, I want a room schedule, or I want a space schedule, or I want an equipment schedule. And it's really quite easy. Kind of looks like a spreadsheet, not really a spreadsheet. You can change the data here, typing it in, and it will change information in about the model. So for instance, if I want to add, type in occupant names, if I want to do things like that, probably not the appropriate place to type in occupant names, but you can do it. It's really straightforward. Jason Winstanley was showing building ops 2 days ago, and he made a statement that said that Revit is not a tool for maintenance and asset management. I completely agree with him. There are other tools for that. It's an authoring tool. It's a great way to build information into models, but it's not the day-to-day tool of your facilities team. So what I want to show you here, though, is just show you kind of a couple more examples of really how easy it is to get data out of the model. So there's another one. There's a product that Autodesk provides. It's for free if you're a subscription member. You have to be a little bit adventurous to plug this into Revit. It's called the Revit DB Link. If you've got some basic database skills, or if you've got some mad database skills, you can plug this thing in, and it makes it easy to extract the data in and out of a Revit model to a database. I use Microsoft Access as an example because most people have it, and it's pretty simple to understand. So it's basically, it's an add-in. I'm going to show one of the add-ins in just a minute that I'm going to be talking about. It's an add-in. There's a little add-in tab up there at the top of Revit, and it allows you to be able to create a new database connection. In this example, I'm creating a Microsoft Access 2007 connection. It's quite simple to do. It will automatically create the database when you tell Revit to go, and it creates basically an Access database, and it allows you to see. It essentially exports all of the data and puts it in a great big Microsoft Access database. And you can look at it, you can run reports, you can do some interesting things with it, you can change it. It's not bi-directional, it's not collaborative. You have to run Revit DB Link again to import it back in. It will, and you can do that right inside of Revit. And after you make those changes, so for instance, I came in here and I filled in my Kobe created by date. I'm a big fan of Kobe. TJ's a big fan of Kobe. We're on the National Kobe Committee. So I type that stuff in, and I can import that back into my model really easily. But keep in mind, it's just an import-export. The last thing it does is it runs an audit. It's kind of nice, and it will tell you everything that changed. kind of give you a little bit of a report. It will tell you the data values that changed, what was filled in, et cetera. So, you know, it's a nice little tool. If you ever want to explore the information that's in a model and you've been maybe a little bit nervous about doing that, you can run this on a model. It will kick out everything. Doors, windows, you name it. It kicks out everything into the spreadsheet. So the second example is another one that is probably not one you're going to try, but one that I like to monkey around with things like this. Autodesk has got a product called Dynamo. Has anybody heard of Dynamo? Probably not. A couple of the more technical people in here. Dynamo is a product that allows you to do all kinds of crazy calculations through a visual programming interface to do crazy stuff inside of an environment like Revit. Like you can create really complex roofing forms based upon formulas that you write and stuff like that. But what it also does is it allows you to extract information easily from Revit. I'm going to actually show you this if I can pull it off in a second. It's just a little plug-in. It's free. You can download it off the internet. It's called Dynamo. Plugs into Revit. And that's what the programming language looks like. Kind of crazy, I know. But basically, you just drag and drop statements. You connect them together. And all of this was done to allow me to extract an Excel spreadsheet of areas. But you can make it bidirectional. So if I change this in the spreadsheet, I can make it update the model. You know, you sort of get that. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it, but it's not for the faint of heart. It's also not for a full programmer. This is a visual programming environment, so it's literally drag and drop. Lots of YouTube videos on how to solve problems. And basically, that's it. It creates an Excel spreadsheet. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to attempt to do this. Live demo. I know someone's saying live demo. I'm already shaking in my boots. All right, so there's a little tab in up. I apologize, I'm looking over my shoulder, but it's showing my PowerPoint on my screen here. So I got an open a model, so I'm going to open this little model right here. It's going to take Revit a second to open this up. So there's a model. And I'm going to go up to my add-ins tab. And I've got some other plugins here. I'll give a shout out to TJ, who's going to be showing the model checker in the next session, which is a super cool tool. Also the Kobe plugin. All of these are free. You can download these. And this is not a mouse, by the way. I just tried it, and it's not a mouse. I'm going to go ahead and start Dynamo up here. And Dynamo is going to give me a list of scripts that I've created, I think. Oh, interesting. It's over here. We'll move it over here. And I'm going to go ahead and open my Revit areas from Dynamo, which is, there it is. Remember that little crazy little thing there? As I zoom in here, you can see that it's looking for stuff. I can't tab. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and run this thing. Watch what it does. It's going to actually create a spreadsheet, which showed up over here again. There it is. Extracted my Revit areas. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But what I'm focusing on here is not things like what the model looks like, what the rooms look like. I'm focusing on the information that you're able to get out of the model because it's incredibly valuable and it's all here. A lot of organizations, Ohio State University is one that you'll often hear talked about, Penn State, Indiana, have produced BIM deliverable guidelines so that they can communicate to their AEC team what their expected results are, and especially when it comes to data from a model that they're getting from the AEC process. And you can see that data. It's in there. It comes with the model. The model checker that TJ will be showing can check the model to make sure that all the data is filled into your specifications properly. But they're pretty cool tools. And what I want to show you is that data is in there, that it's not mythical, that BIM is not a magical thing. It's just essentially a way of visually gathering, I think, a lot of rich data about the buildings that are being built. So let me go ahead and flip back to my PowerPoint. I managed to pull that off without too much pain, and it was completely live. That's not what I want. That's not what I want. This is when it gets, oh. I need to close that. Here we go. However, here's the however. After I've done those fun things, I really want you to understand the true data challenge, because as I was saying, this is not project-centric, it's portfolio-centric. The data problem is actually a lot bigger. If you're thinking about dozens of models, if not hundreds of models, this can get out of control very quickly. And it's not just about the information coming out of the model, but it's really about the fact that you guys may manage multiple campuses. You may have hundreds of buildings, if not thousands of buildings on a single campus. You may have standards that you need to have enforced. You may have differing technology being used. You may have different products other than Revit, for instance. You may have an IWMS or CAFM or CMMS solution. You may have a human resources system. You may have something like Banner for classroom scheduling. You may have all kinds of different technology. You may be enabling some parts of your facility team to use mobile devices. You may have different file formats. You may be getting models and drawings from the AEC process in formats that you guys don't have. Like you might be getting MicroStation drawings, but yet you're using AutoCAD. There's all kinds of different formats for photographs and documents and everything. It makes the problem even more complicated. Then we've got data coming from maybe different sources, maybe your classroom scheduling system, your facilities management system, your work order system. Maybe you may be integrated with emergency services. There may be, this problem actually gets complicated very quickly. Then there's accessibility, and I'm not talking, well, ADA accessibility is one thing. Are the technologies that you're using, are they using things like high contrast displays, large fonts and things like that? But also, what types of devices are you allowing people to access this on? Are you giving access to students on a phone or an iPad? Are you doing that with your faculty and staff? Another piece of accessibility is data security. Are you allowing your facilities data outside of your campus environment? How much are you allowing from your GIS environment, from your campus map? Are you allowing people external to the university to drill in? Tons of big questions that need to be answered. And then the last one is the workflows involved. So I really think that the collaboration is the area where we start talking about workflows, and workflows would be your day-to-day sort of facilities workflows. It may be a space request from a department. It may be a maintenance work order request. It could be all sorts of workflows that you guys need to enforce. You've got lots of locations. You've got lots of buildings. You've got lots of facilities team members. You've got your service staff, et cetera. And that can be completely overwhelming, and BIM is just a piece of that. So the information coming from a model, it's there somewhere, BIM, is just really a piece of that problem that needs to be, I think, considered when you're thinking about adopting a process like this. And it can be really overwhelming. So we try to provide well, first of all, the way to organize all of this information is really, I think, 4 major components to that. One is technology, taking those crazy bubbles and sort of organizing them in a way that allows you to be able to organize the way you look at your data and facilities by region, by campus, by building, by floors, then the spaces, and then the assets, the zones, the systems, all of this stuff sort of flowing off of that. And if you don't have a good physical space inventory, as most of you probably do if you're at this conference, you're kind of doomed in terms of being able to, if you don't have one that's got high quality, reliable data, it's probably going to be really difficult for you to be able to achieve what I'm talking about today, which is a level of reporting across not just one model, but potentially hundreds of models. So technology is something that can help unify that. There's lots of technologies out there. We've got one, but a lot of them have been mentioned. There are other business partners here who have different technologies, document management solutions like Meridian with ACAD Plus, things like that, which are all part of this puzzle. Then we've got the systems involved, not only just building systems, but the systems that you have, your campus systems, your human resources systems, your classroom scheduling system. If you want that data available, you've got to be working with people within your organization to make sure that that data is connected. So here's just kind of an example of what I'm talking about. Revit's really great for having that room data, but it's probably not good for having people's names or the departments, et cetera. There's other systems that are better for that. And then the data itself, making sure that that data is flowing in and that it's compatible. And then the last one is process, being able to enforce process across your campus. So who has formal approval processes on a daily basis in anything you do? Everybody. Nobody just, it's not the wild, wild west, although we are in Colorado. you like to have process because process creates efficiencies. It allows you to do your reports and all of that kind of stuff. I don't think that BIM is a disruptive process for facilities management if you think about it from a data standpoint. It's another data source. Just want to check my time. All right, so as I was saying earlier, we really think of space as the cornerstone, the space coming out of those models, as I was showing earlier. It is there. That's not the best way to get the space out of your models unless you just want to try it and test it out. There are better ways. If you're using a system like an IWMS or a CAFM solution, you're able to really treat your space and assets as really this cornerstone of the way you report on the efficiencies of the way your organization is running. So that's a cornerstone for being able to enable processes such as the moves that you have going on. I know that on-site was in, what's that? Right, was mentioning the cost of moving and being able to control that process. Then strategic planning, being able to, doing your stacking and blocking. Space really enables all of this. All of this is coming out of the model, should be coming out of your models. Room scheduling, so being able to not only schedule your classrooms, but your meeting space, being able to schedule this classroom, et cetera. Real estate, so taking advantage of not only the buildings that you own, but most of the universities that I've ever dealt with, including the one that I worked for, leased a lot of space on the edge of campus for as a methodology of managing growth and getting research grants. Surveys and assessment, being able to survey the condition of your facilities, the use of your space, assessing the way they operate. And then other more tangential areas coming off of space data, such as your projects. Where is the project? How are you rolling up your project costs? Maintenance, how are you tracking where your maintenance is? Can you look at a color-coded floor plan and identify the location of all critical maintenance? Mobility, being able to determine, so one of the things that we realized, and we certainly didn't come up with this, but in 2007, Apple released the iPhone and really changed the world. It was the first smartphone, and it allowed people to not necessarily have to work at their desk anymore. And students are doing all kinds of crazy things. My son is in college now, and we were visiting the University of Rochester, and they took us to their new library, and we went into the library, and there are no books. There's nothing. It's just very open office environment, lots of glass, lots of little places for students. They say students actually camp in there with sleeping bags, and they're able to do all of their schoolwork and studying. They said during finals that place is packed. They call it a library because of mobility. They're able to do that anywhere, anytime. And then the last, sustainability, being able to manage your sustainability programs. These are all, I kind of consider these tangential. They're successful if they're integrated into your space and asset system. Because, for instance, a sustainability program, let's say you're doing a recycling program. Where are all your bins? Where are all the windows that you've upgraded to higher levels of insulation, et cetera? So being able to do all of that really comes down to where things are. So highlighting the importance of space. Once again, BIM does not disrupt any of this. BIM dovetails with it quite well. So I was saying earlier, and I was giving you a demonstration actually being inside of Revit. I was in the role of being sort of the Revit expert, Revit specialist, CAD specialist, whatever you want to call me. But I honestly believe for lifecycle BIM to be successful, everybody needs to participating. That doesn't mean you need to know how to use Revit. You just need to know how to use technology that's widely available to most of us through IWMS, CAFM, CMMS solutions that allow people like lease administrators, move managers, space planners, maintenance technicians to integrate with BIM data. One of the things that I love is that we've got some customers, Boston Scientific is one, Xavier's one, that takes a lot of BIM data out into the field with technicians on phones. Those people have no clue what BIM is. They don't even know that they're affecting a model. They don't know that when they change an asset ID or update an asset type or a space type, that they're actually updating a model. It's beautiful because they're participating in a BIM-based process. It's not disruptive, they don't know it, but they've been enabled. And I think that that's really sort of the true promise of being able to do this. So here's an overview of a solution for distributed BIM-based space management. So So how does this supplement what I've been talking about earlier? So we've showed Revit. I showed you that you can get all of this really great stuff in. Something called infinite attribution. So we actually track a tremendous amount of information on our spaces. It's not a good idea to put all of that information into a model, because the more information you put in there, the bigger the model gets. The more data, the more stuff you stick in there. Somebody sent me a model recently, and they were wondering why it was several gigabytes in size, and it was taking forever to load, and it was just really unwieldy. And what they had done is that they had downloaded manufacturer's chairs from Herman Miller, which are incredibly complex, and they put 800 of them into their floor plan because they wanted to track the furniture. And each one of those was, I think, 8 megabytes in size. So do the math. This thing got massive, and it's because they didn't realize that, they were probably putting something in the model. And along with that Revit family that they were sticking in there was like crazy amounts of data associated with like how big the wheels were and the fabric and all kinds of crazy stuff that they didn't necessarily need for day-to-day operations. So what a system like this does, when you put it out there on the web and you integrate your BIM data, it allows you to do infinite attribution so you can track all of your really critical space data. It also allows you to do big data reporting, kind of a big name for it, but it's really business intelligence. It allows you to put a data reporting layer on top of all of this really rich data and do some really great stuff with it. Not only just space data, but integrating it with your human resources data, your CMMS data. It doesn't matter if you've got data coming from a different system. You can connect it. We all know how to do that. We can get it done. IT information, maybe jack data or the IT assets, who's been assigned a computer, all of that stuff can actually be tied to this data fairly easily. This sort of approach also uses role and user-based security, so it's not a one person gets all scenario. I'm talking about the space team getting space data and the maintenance team getting maintenance data, and somebody who's a manager maybe getting the ability to configure permissions or look at dashboards and things. So we really believe that role and user-based security is critical here. We are in the age of data security, especially when it comes to facilities. Nobody takes this lightly. Data outside of your control that gives critical access to information. One of the things that we always hid at the University of Arizona was our research laboratories, because we were doing a lot of research, and some people outside of the university environment didn't agree with the types of research that was being done. So we never let, we were very careful about the information that we let out there. And I know that you guys deal with that problem every day. This also allows you to integrate BIM into that daily facility workflow. I can't say this enough. I try to get people to not think of this as something that's new or something that's going to break what they do. So that's BIM to us. That's BIM. Looks like a regular facilities plan. That's BIM. You can also look at model views, which I'll show. That's BIM. Lifecycle BIM as we see it. And in a solution like this, you can really take not one model, but lots of models. You can not only take lots of models, but you can take lots of AutoCAD drawings. I will guarantee you that most of you are in here and your facilities are being operated off of some sort of 2D CAD drawing. Could be a MicroStation drawing, could be AutoCAD, could be other things. But that's what we see. A lot of people are starting to move to this, but they live in a hybrid world where the majority of their drawings and things are in 2D, and that's fine. But that information needs to get to somebody, and that somebody is over here on the right-hand side, sort of major FM functional areas like space management, maintenance, asset management, a lot of other functional areas, classroom scheduling, all of that. But in this example, we're keeping it pretty simple. That's all. And a solution like this is connected via a web server. In our example, we use an ASP.NET application, web services, drawing files, file server that has the AutoCAD and Revit files in, a database server, a business intelligence server. You know why I'm showing you guys this? Because you pay a lot of money for this kind of technology, and I want to show you what you're paying for. It's not easy. This is a lot of heavy-duty stuff. Then integrating your human resources database, finance database, miscellaneous databases. Most of you in the solutions that you've got for your campuses probably look pretty similar to this. They can be quite complex. And all of these things here in the center sort of manage the input and output in a responsible way. They check your standards, they check your security, they do all of that stuff, check the integrity of your database, they let you do the reporting, they serve up the drawings, they do all of that kind of stuff. All BIM, but also all CAD. right, coming in on the left-hand side here. So underneath it all, so I was showing you earlier, I was using Revit and I was extracting a spreadsheet to look at space data. The leap between that and what I'm talking kind of looks like this. This is an eye chart, and I put it up there on purpose because there's a lot of stuff running beneath the scene here. There's data integration, there's AutoCAD and Revit files, there's dashboards, a data dictionary which adheres to your internal data standards, there's workflows, browsers, emails going out, text messages being delivered, reports, all of that sitting below sort of all of these FM processes that occur every single day in your environments. Most of you probably have a piece of this. Some of you maybe have more of it. Some of you may have all of it, but all of these processes can be quite complex. So we need subject matter experts in every single one of these areas. We don't need BIM experts in every one of these areas. BIM is a component of this. All right, so using role and user-based security. In the center here, we've got a what I consider to be maybe a BIM expert, a Revit guru in your facilities. And that person may be working on things such as models. This is actually what that model looks like on the web over here on the left. It's also what that model looks like on a tablet in a very different way. That's actually a scenario planning view of what models may look like. So maybe you're building a new facility and you want to look at that facility in different ways, or you're going to restack a building. Maybe you're going to be moving departments. I will guarantee you your move planning team is not looking at that. They're looking at this. They're looking at efficiencies that can be gained by your restacking process. It's all BIM, and it's all coming from that original model. Another example, you may have, this is the example I was talking about, a technician out there in the field. This guy right here is simply he's just checking to make sure that the PMs have been performed on this fire extinguisher. He may need to locate all of those fire extinguishers. Once again, I really believe holistically in space management. Space management is fire extinguishers. Most people maybe don't think of it that way, but you have to know where they are so that you can report on them and you can do an assessment of them. So in this example, this technician is perhaps looking at different views, maybe the physical location of where all of those are so that he can make sure that the PMs have been performed. But when he goes up and he barcode scans it and it pulls up the equipment record, he's actually looking at a data view of that piece of equipment and when it was last maintained, et cetera. Once again, BIM, right? A BIM-based workflow flowing from the model, that data that he's looking at there, the location of all that stuff is actually originating in the model that was put into the system. Some more role-based security and views. This is lifecycle BIM. As far as I'm concerned, it's a push pin located, we've got one conveniently located in Colorado there. There's a campus there. If I were to click on that, we would be able to drill into a campus. And in about 3 clicks, I can get to the model. This is a way of visually organizing. There's some really cool technologies here, the Esri stuff, as well as the campus mapping tool that was close to us as another vendor. Being able to drill into those maps and see visually what your campus looks like and getting to that data really quickly. But you may also ultimately end up looking at that. I don't think, a lot of people when they think of BIM, I think mistakenly think of it as 3D, but that's actually from a model. It's just a view of a model that's sliced down through the floor plan at 4 feet above the finished floor. It's the typical way that we look at floor plans. We slice them, we look down. BIM tools have the ability to do that really easily, whereas in a CAD environment, most CAD environments, you have to sort of draw each one of those. So this is a view of a model, potentially with the ability to be able to get all of that rich data out of there. There's another view of model data. Most people don't think of it that way either. This is a building equipment inventory. All of this stuff is actually in a Revit model. As I change this stuff, the Revit model gets changed. As I click on that edit button, I get a big data view that loads down here that shows me all of the data that's in the model. And I can change it and I can hit it and it goes back into the model. But for the most part, once again, as I was saying earlier, I'm probably not the person who owns those models nor even knows that they exist. Also the ability to be able to get to stuff like work orders and PM schedules and documents and images, photographs, O&M manuals, all of that. See, this stuff down here, it doesn't really belong in the model, but it needs to be linked to the model, referenced to the model. And we really consider all of that rich data as lifecycle BIM data, but it's not necessarily in the model itself. Then drum roll, what you've all been waiting for. That's really sort of that's I think how most people think of BIM, and they think that that's probably the way that you're going to be navigating a BIM model. This is using the Autodesk Forge viewer to look at all of that rich data. It's just another way of looking at that floor plan. It's a really cool, dynamic way of looking at that floor plan because I can see relationships the way I can't in a floor plan. One of the cool things that I like to do in a model is to put myself at eye level and make the walls transparent so I can see the HVAC running through the overhead. That I think is incredibly useful. You can do things, you can see through walls. You can basically become Superman. You can do all kinds of crazy things. You can track piping to a valve location, which we would have traditionally had to do on a plan, following maybe a schematic plan of a mechanical system. This makes it a lot easier to trace that sort of stuff. But that's just another view that could potentially be available to your FM team. This is in an IWMS environment looking at this. All of these screenshots I've been showing you are in an IWMS environment. Most of the time, our customers that are using this are a little reticent to start revealing this to facilities teams, but they've been surprised when they do that they actually consume it pretty quickly and they feel pretty comfortable with it, but it's not a necessity. You don't have to flip to that if you don't want. Here's another example of what that may look like based upon role-based security and views. This is looking at average costs of all of my asset systems by category, average cost, total cost, request cost analysis, all coming out of models, and that doesn't look like a model. Facility dashboard, all of this data coming from models, being able to look at my equipment cost categories, also being able to look at things such as total costs of my facilities organized by space, base type, building, floor, room, etc. The other thing is that this provides is the ability to, and I think you really need to think about this, all of this data does not, if you're working in the AEC process and you're requesting information to be put into the models and drawings to your standards, you need to understand that that model that information doesn't magically show up the day that the building opens its doors. You can develop a process that asks specific team members and specific organizations that are your contractors and consultants to put this data in. And this is just kind of an example. During design and engineering, we may be adding some basic asset information. We don't really know what's going to go in there yet, but we know roughly what it may be. We may know what the location of it is, but we haven't quite figured out what our room numbering is going to be. And as we go through the process, the GCs and subs, as we're starting to build, we're putting things in like manufacturers, models, install dates, warranty information, sort of building the value of this data over time. How am I doing on time? All right, I got about 10 minutes. Then we go into commissioning, and we're adding maybe barcodes and things like that so we can scan this information and getting it in. And going into operations, we're adding things like room numbers, space types, capacity, sort of that day-to-day stuff that we're using for our blocking and tackling of our daily space management. And if you're doing all of this in a way that's adheres to your standards and has workflow processes built around it, the next time you go into a renovation in one of your campus facilities, that data is available and you can just give it right back to the project teams, and they know that it's an accurate place to start. We really believe that lifecycle BIM takes into account this in a very circular manner. In other words, it can just keep cycling through. I've heard far too many times that somebody gets a model and they put it on a file server and they really wanted to use it and they didn't. And 6 months later, it's irrelevant because things changed, people moved, walls got torn down, something got added on, the floor gets used for something it wasn't designed for, labs get changed. So I really believe that lifecycle BIM and the value of your spatial data really needs to be sort of maintained all the time. All right, so some of the things that enables coming off of your space inventory from your models, your workflows and surveys. This could be your annual surveys for indirect cost recovery and for your research grant tracking. Whoever thought of using Revit models for that? It's just space data, and that's completely enabled by this process. Reporting and analytics, being able to report. I'm going to show a bunch of reports coming from this kind of coming from BIM data. Benchmarking, so you can see how you're performing against other universities. Trends in history, so the ability to be able to roll back in time, look how you were doing in terms of capacity in the past and capacity in the present. You're probably going to see that you're over capacity over time. I don't know of any university that's ever said, oh my God, we've got too much space. That's never happened once. Has that ever happened to anybody here? Never. So trends in history over time, being able to use that as proof points, organized spatially by building, so that when you go to your Board of Regents or you go to your state or whoever's funding you, you can make that argument, your credibility. So, you know, I know this because I worked in the environment. Everybody's always, it's like the boy who cried wolf, right? It's like administrators probably get so tired of facility teams saying, oh my, we need another building, we need another building, we need another building. Well, you can prove it, I can guarantee it. And that stuff can come from Revit models or BIM models, just like anything else. So here's an example. This is BIM to me, life cycle, being able to look at my space analysis. This particular report's coming from a bunch of, happens to be Revit models across a bunch of buildings, being able to look at things such as the building, the floor, the occupancy, the capacity, the area, the percent occupied. That's just an example of being able to look at that data across the entire portfolio with a single click. Another one here is vacancy analysis. I love doing vacancy analysis because we can see how screwed we are when it comes to available space. But also, there is a healthy amount of vacancy that needs to occur. I don't think any universities have it, so that you can move things and respond to special requests, et cetera. The way we handled it at Arizona, and this is a long time ago, is when we had a crucial space need, we leased more space because, you know, it takes buildings a long time to get built. So there's a vacancy analysis coming from models. An example one, another one, upcoming moves. Whoever thought of using BIM data as a move planning tool. All of this data is just simply coming. We create a process around that. This is our upcoming moves organized by date. And I can see the move types, box move, building to building move, the associated costs associated with that. I can do a roll up and use it as an argument to reduce churn in the university, you know, being able to do that. Another example, room usage by activity. This is sort of the holy grail, I think, of every organization. How many of us say we're about 90-95% occupied? And then you've got somebody like the president that walks through and he's like, why are all my classrooms empty and the offices, professors are never in their office. My wife was a university professor for 14 years, so I can say that. So the holy grail is really understanding your occupancy versus your actual real utilization. There's all kinds of cool emerging technologies. I could have done that's another area I'm excited about. I could have done a whole nother presentation on that. We're doing things with organizations like occupancy sensors that you stick on chairs and triangulation in the overhead and tracking devices. And we also have a tool that allows you to walk through with a tablet and just log at certain times of day our people in their offices so that you can see things such as room usage by activity. This is saying I walked by and the person was on their phone, they were in a meeting, they were in training, they were presenting, they were collaborating, and being able to say, you can actually do these kinds of surveys as you walk through your space to try to figure out what people are doing. You can also just simply look at how well your space is used over time. All BIM data. It's just information that really using that BIM data coming from the models to organize your ability to be able to walk your floors and track this. So we can say, gosh, all of our classrooms are, as I was a student, I never picked 8 a.m. classes. And I never picked anything after 3. So most university classrooms are probably stuffed in the middle of the day and maybe not heavily as utilized later in the day. You can kind of see that trend over time using BIM data. Here's another example of being able to take that spatial data and push it out and make you more critical to the university. Because I honestly think that he who holds the space data holds the keys to success. So your facility team should be using it, your classroom scheduling team should be using it, everybody using it. This is allowing me to look at my annual costs across all of my facilities, my historical real estate expenses, showing me how much I'm leasing for space over time, even doing things such as organizing by building my service requests and seeing which buildings are maybe costing me more to maintain, et cetera, all being driven by BIM-based spatial data. I think that's all right. So we actually do a lot on this process. I work with an organization called the BIM FM Consortium, which is a lot of organizations not just software companies, Autodesk is on this with us, but mostly what we call owner organizations, universities, et cetera, and there's architects and contractors, big ones on this, that have helped us create, and anyone can have this for free. It's about a 30-page guideline that's a primer for teaching you what it takes to get to building information modeling for facilities management. It's just recommendations on how to work with your AEC team, the key things you need to focus on. It's got a little worksheet that helps you to figure out what attributes you want to track on your space, your zones, your floors, and all of that. That's available for anyone. If you want it, send me an email or give me your card and I'll send you a link to download that for free. Or you can search for it and find it as well out there. It's a really nice guide. And that's it. I'm going to take questions for a couple of minutes and then shoot to the airport as fast as I humanly can because I am very familiar with Denver's security lines, which can be crazy. Oh, microphone. Does anybody have any questions? That's a lot. You guys just know I need to get to the airport. You're being... How does that thing come out? You have to like God, man. Oh, it's just like that. Any questions?
I'd ask them, but I have to speak so slowly.
No offense, of course.
That would delay you.
Yeah. Actually, let me give this to you because he wants to get it on the. You can. I'm totally good for a couple of questions. Go for it. Oh, you really weren't? You were just. Oh. Failed humor from my ASU counterpart there, on my part. Okay. Thank you guys very, very much. Thank you.